The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
Welcome to the Silver Bells Murders, the unofficial American Gothic internet radio show exclusively on PapiChuloRadio.com. Papi Chulo Radio Pop Culture on Demand. Today is Friday, August 5th, 2016, and I am your host, Mike. During tonight's broadcast, we're going to recap, review, and dissect the latest episode of CBS American Gothic. Please welcome my co-host, the lovely Jess.
Hi everybody, hope you're having a good night.
And last but certainly not least, Papi Chulo.
Hello listeners, welcome, welcome. You got me all wobbly.
Oh Lord. Let's jump into our recap of Season 1, Episode 7, titled The Gross Clinic, and aired on August 3rd, 2016. Here is the official synopsis of the episode. A major revelation about the Silver Bells murders turns everyone's world in the Hawthorne family upside down. Christina loses trust in Garrett, Allison's Mariel campaign sinks, Cam's sobriety is tested, and Tessa witnesses disturbing new behavior in Jack. Also, Brady is worried that the new information about Silver Bells isn't exactly what it seems to be. Before I get everybody's initial reaction, here are the ratings that TV Line provided. American Gothic was steady with a 2.5 million total viewers and a 0.5 in the demo. And going through on, what was everybody's initial reaction of the episode? I'll start off with Jess. What was your reaction of this episode overall?
This show finds a way to make me want to pull out my hair in new and terrifying ways every week. So kudos, American Gothic. You have officially creeped me out on an entirely new level this week. And also, I'm a little bit confused about, DNA evidence and how it works, but I'm not a cop, so I'm going to let you do you, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy the ride.
Fair enough. And Poppy, what was your official synopsis of the episode? What was your initial reaction? What the hell?
Well, there you go. I enjoyed the episode. I thought it was a lot of fun. I am thoroughly entertained with this series. I'm loving the twists, the turns, the new revelations, the new clues, the surprises. I'm digging it. And I really enjoyed what happened in this episode, and I'm looking forward to chatting about it with both of you.
Right on. I have to agree. This episode was actually really good. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like, again, it's still definitely really moved forward the plot after everything that happened from the previous episode, and so many things were happening, I think. But I felt like we were not bombarded with so many things. I felt like this episode really took in the plots. The main plot and then, the subplots in between. I think they took them with, very good strides along through. So I think this episode definitely was strong, so I can't wait to get into it. But before we get into a thorough recap, here are a few reminders on how you can interact with the show via social media. Follow the show on Tumblr, thesilverbellsmurders.tumblr.com. You can follow the station on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and just go ahead and just find us and like us. Help support Papi Chulo Radio financially by visiting gofundme.com/Papi Chulo Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or maybe even concerns? Email us via contact@PapiChuloRadio.com. Are you interested in joining the Papi Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality like us, or maybe even a blog contributor, email talon@poppychuloradio.com. You can binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chulo Radios programs by visiting poppychuloradio.com/archives. And don't forget to search for the Silver Bells Murders through iTunes and hit that subscribe button. New episodes are available to download on Fridays throughout the entire summer. So, now that we've said our little introductions, let's see if we can dive right into this episode. So, when we last left off from the previous episode, we see Christina, stabbed Garrett, and Garrett's on the ground. He looks like he's losing consciousness. He's, suffered, massive blood loss. And the episode opens up with Christina explaining to the officers that are kind of taking her in, and she's explaining, what he was doing, that she's explaining that she was with him at the woods, and that how they met, typical witness stuff, providing information about what happened. But one of the things I thought was kind of interesting was that her demeanor. She didn't seem like she was super afraid or scared, knowing that the information that she was given came off as like this person is a potential killer. To me, I don't know, maybe it's just me, I was given the feeling that she wasn't as scared as you normally would be, I guess, in that situation. But then she finds out that it wasn't Garrett, that it was, her father, because she asked, well, was it him? She's really wanting to know what happened. And they tell her that no, that it was his father. And as we move on a little bit further, we see Madeline is looking at the glass, and it has Hawthorne family, and it has, everything describing them, and it says murder on it. So whoever did that, bunch of jerks. But before I move on a little bit further, I actually wanted to get y'all's opinion. When the episode opened up, how did you guys feel about Christina's portrayal of her, the way that she portrayed of her being afraid? Did you guys believe that she was actually afraid or in danger, or did you guys feel like, she may have played it off, or she kind of already had the intent of doing it? Or how did you guys feel? I'll start off with Poppy.
Okay,
did you buy it?
I did, just because I feel like when you are in a situation that you feel is scary and frightening, you get sort of that additional rush of adrenaline. And I'll let her pass and say maybe she had the adrenaline in her system, and maybe that's why she didn't seem scared or terrified, or as well as, she's the daughter of the Silver Bells killer, of a victim of the Silver Bells killer, right. And I'm going to assume that maybe in her mind, throughout all the time that she's been alive, she's probably been like, if I ever meet the killer, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. So maybe she was ready for that day, and maybe that's why she didn't seem afraid. Sort of. I don't feel like she suspected anything until she got that phone call. So right. I don't think that she had planned to stab Garrett, but I feel like maybe in her mind she was ready for the day to confront the person that killed her father, to confront the Silver Bells killer. And I think maybe the adrenaline in her system is what sort of had her in a more, I don't want to say calm state, but in a more controlled state as opposed to a fearful state of mind.
Okay, fair enough. If we were to move along and we see Garrett is talking to Cutter, the Detective Cutter, and basically she just says, I'm not a doctor, but I do want to ask you a couple questions. So we don't really see the main questions that were asked, but the scene moves on to the family going in to see Garrett, and they decide, to talk with each other and try to figure out, okay, more or less, Garrett, well, what did you say? I don't know if anybody picked it up, but you kind of notice that one of the first things that's noticed is, Malin really wants to know, what did you tell the police? You can tell that her controlness or her attitude towards it really shines in and says, well, what did you say? Instead of, asking, oh, how are you, or are you okay? Like usually a typical mother would ask, but she kind of immediately stepped over and just asked, what did you tell the police? So then
Mm-hmm.
he goes on to explain that, in more or less, I'm paraphrasing more or less, he explains that he kind of had this feeling, and the reason that he left was because he had confronted his father about it, and he noticed that when he got into a discussion with him, he said, if I find out that you kill somebody, I'm gonna come back and I'm, gonna report it. So he was under the notion that since nothing happened in every consecutive year, that it was assumed that Mitch for short, I guess, was the one who actually really committed these atrocities, that he committed these murders. So Garrett was under the impression that, okay, he really did. And one of the siblings asked, well, why didn't you say anything, which was Tessa? How come you didn't say anything? Why would you keep it to yourself? And you can see she's really hurt that he never said anything, and she says, you left us alone in the house with a killer. And Garrett explains, well, I didn't have any real proof to show that, that our father was the killer. Jess, that scene really brought together the family to talk about and more or less figure out what's going on. Do you feel like Jess was in the right? What the hell? Do you feel like Tessa was in the right mind?
Jess is in the show?
I know. I was like, what? She makes a special guest star appearance. Do you feel like Tessa was in the right mind to get upset at Garrett, or do you feel like she was not really justified to do that?
Honestly, if I was in Tessa's position, I'd like to say that I'd react differently, but I wouldn't. The thought that you are living with a serial killer that,
or at least assumed that this person is a serial
exactly, an alleged serial killer
Mm-hmm.
that tore apart so many other families and didn't care. Like the fact that you are living with somebody who is allegedly cold-blooded enough to take away someone else's life and stage it so elaborately and basically turn into a serial killer, that is some terrifying stuff. Like, I'm not, but if I was related to a serial killer and I spent a lot of time with that person and I didn't know that they were a serial killer, like, I would be devastated, especially if they were gone and couldn't defend themselves. I feel like all of my memories of them would be warped and tarnished and tainted, and there wouldn't be like real fear, that they were going to come back and hurt me in some way, but there would be more of a sense of I should have known and I should have done something to protect the people that got hurt, even though Tess was very small when the killings initially began. So as much as I would like to say, like, maybe she could have been a bit more, diplomatic about things. Nah, that's her dad. She doesn't have to be fucking diplomatic. I would be scared too. And also, I think she did a great job basically confronting Garrett, because as we've seen already consistently throughout the show, and I think this is one of their strong areas, Tessa and Garrett relate to each other on a different level. Like, Garrett is obviously the most fond of Tessa and is obviously the most protective of her. I think he sees her as the most innocent of the pathological screw-ups in his family. And so for her to be disappointed in him, I kind of got the sense like that was the hardest thing for him, because she finally stopped seeing him as, big brother Garrett who took me on bike rides and did all these things for me when I was little. Now she's looking at him not through, rose-tinted glasses, but with more of a betrayed, doe-eyed Bambi watching its mother get strapped to the back of a truck look. Like, how could you?
Jesus Christ, Jess. That's definitely one vivid no, that's one vivid detail you can give. That's definitely true, and you do raise up a good point that she's not oblivious or at least what it seems to be. She's not oblivious to how Garrett is right now, and how he used to treat her, and she's not blinded by the bond, the way he was back then. And I think
Yes.
it does see it. You can see it in that little exchange that Garrett does seem, sad, and he feels like he disappointed her, because you could see the sadness in his look, saying, and he's trying to explain, and most of the time he's looking at Tessa. If you look back into the scene, he's not really looking at anyone else. He's not really glancing over to anyone else, but he's trying. It feels like he was trying to explain to Tessa, everything that is going on, and the reasons why he did it, feeling that in some way he was trying to protect them, or essentially, justify him leaving. So, speaking of Tessa, if we move on,
But just one quick thing to note of that scene in the hospital. After Garrett said to his family what he was asked and his responses, he gave a look to his mother. And they gave a look to each other, and I thought that was interesting. So
Yeah,
we
like,
could
it was a
put a
brief
bookmark to that.
moment. It was a brief pause. Like, you could tell, like, she was like, wait, are you really gonna say the entire truth, or are you going to...
Or almost like, good boy, you didn't say everything. Good boy.
Right, so it felt like it was definitely alluding to something, and I felt like it was gonna foreshadow some sort of meeting that they were gonna have, or something later on. But going back onto Tessa, if we were to move just a little bit further into the episode, we see, Tessa really is contemplating everything, and you see Brady is, Brady saying, I'm so sorry, he's apologizing for the events that took place in regards to Garrett being stabbed, and he's saying, I'm so sorry. And you can see Tessa is not having it. She says, well, it would have been nice if my brother wasn't stabbed. It really would have been nice. And Brady this time plays the card around and says, what if I can ask to get time off so we can spend time to each other, because I feel like our communication, is not that strong and whatnot. And, because we have trust issues with each other. And you see that they're having, this little intimate moment, and they're, talking to each other. And we notice that Tessa brings up an event that happened in her life in regards to her father. In one of her birthdays, woke up really early for like a balloon ride, and she's talking about this anecdote that happened, and we notice that she looks at kind of like a hot air balloon type glass thing that's hanging, or like on the shelf or something, and she's looking at it, and then she explains that it was back from 1999, and she just just throws it on the ground. She just smashes it, it's broken, and she's saying what if he was playing this character just to fuel his desire to do this. And you see she's completely stuck in her own mind, because she doesn't know who or what her father is anymore. Poppy, if you were Brady, and you told her that you were sorry, that you did all this and whatnot, do you feel, would you have explained to her, the reason why you have left her, or would you have tried to console her in a different way? Because Brady tried only saying, that I'm sorry, that it led up to it, but he never mentioned the, reason why he had left her. Would you have consoled her in a different way, or do you feel like, that was the best thing that you could do for Tessa?
Yeah, I think at the time that was probably the best way that he could have tried to reconcile with her after everything that had happened. And I get where she's coming from, because she's like questioning everything, because she was a child at the time of the original murder, and it was her birthday, and putting two and two together, she realizes that the night before her birthday, when her father woke her up early, that's when he was committing the first murder. So she's rightfully pissed and scared and ashamed and worried, and she has all these thoughts of what if, was this man just playing around as Mitchell Hawthorne? Who was he really? Who was he really? Was he really a murderer? How could I been living with the murderer and not know it, and all this kind of stuff. So I get where both of them were coming from. It was interesting, though, to see that... Well, no, we learned two things about Tessa that was interesting. The first thing is that she was taking meds or something like that, and Brady was like, maybe we should call Dr. Whatever, to get you back on the meds and that kind of thing. That was interesting. Or I don't know if maybe those were hormonal meds for them to have a baby.
That was
in the beginning. I wasn't sure though. It wasn't until I guess later it confirms it. I was like,
I thought it was anxiety meds.
I know. I was like, maybe it's that too.
I thought it was anxiety, or I thought it was something to do with having a baby. Only because in the previous episodes they had mentioned that they had been trying to get.
Yeah. So
I was under.
Didn't she also mention at her father's funeral with Garrett, she's like, I have really bad anxiety and I had to go off the meds because we're trying for a baby?
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Okay, so there's that too. And then the second thing is that she violently threw that thing. So I was like, okay, she's got a little bit of a violent streak in her.
Yeah, she didn't just passionately throw it or whatever. She chucked it. She literally just chucked it and threw it on the ground because she was pissed, and you could see that she's has that high sense of rage.
Mm-hmm.
But some people would say, well, it's because it's in reaction of the information that she found. But then somebody could say, well, that was already in her. It's just this event just only allowed her to showcase it further on. So I thought it was a little interesting that she literally chucked that thing to pieces on the ground. Like, holy crap!
And it was pretty.
It was. I was like,
but I guess you don't want to have the bad memory.
Of course, and I had the volume up on my headset, and I just hear I'm like watching or whatever, and then I just hear chucking. I'm like, oh god, that's loud. But yeah, she definitely chucked it. Holy crap! And speaking of, really interesting little conversations, we go now to Madeline and Garrett at the hospital, and it's a very brief scene, but they do discuss more or less, about Mitch, their father, taking the fall, and Madeline says, it's okay, or it's better for him to take the fall. I thought that raised major eyebrows, even though the little scene was super short. Madeline mentions that he's holding Garrett's hand. It looks intimate, and she says, it's don't second guess this, but it's best for your father to take the fall. And you hear the eerie music in the background, and then it just cuts to go on to the next scene. How did you guys feel about that scene particularly? Because I feel like that was definitely one of the few scenes in the episode that was a definite pivotal moment for the show. Jess, how did you feel about Madeline saying to Garrett that don't second guess this, but it's a good thing that your father is the one that's taking the fall? When you heard that, what did you think?
Immediately, the song Man Killer by Headley popped into my head, and I was so mad because it ruined the song for me, and I really liked that song. But I was not shocked. I was just like, oh, Sam is right. Sam's not with us tonight. But she constantly has a theory about Madeline being, the ringleader of the entire operation. And I can definitely see it. She's something else, let me tell you. And she is the kind of dysfunction that you don't want to be near. You don't want your children near. You see her and you run as fast as you can in the other direction because she is just scary. And the fact that Garrett is still keeping her secret after all these years and all that's happened, he got stabbed because of her secret and he still wouldn't open up.
Yeah.
That is a twisted, but also forged of steel loyalty between them right there. I'm not sure if it's reciprocated, like on her end, but he's definitely gonna have some mommy issues if he doesn't already when he gets older. No wonder that poor kid spent like 14 years living in the woods. I understand him now. I do.
But I mean, if we were to go off of that, how he's loyal or whatever, but couldn't that be mistaken that maybe he knows something that it might actually come back to him? So that's why he's not necessarily showing that has a high caliber of loyalty towards a particular individual in the family, but it's more so because it incriminates him, or it'll showcase that maybe he had something to do with it.
I
Do you
don't
feel
know.
like that's a
To be
possibility?
honest with you, I don't think Garrett gives a fuck. Like, whatever happened
think
with
he
this
gives a crap.
Silver Bells thing, I don't think he cares about whether or not he's caught up in the crossfire anymore. Like, he's just so done with his family. I think, he's got a twisted sense of loyalty towards his mom, but he's also, I think, still protecting his younger siblings, particularly Tessa. But I do think his protection extends to Cam and even Allison as well. Like, I think you're right, he does know more than he's letting on, but he is not letting it get out because he wants to spare his siblings the horrific knowledge of whatever he has on her that, the others don't. He's trying to keep them in the dark for their own protection, which, you know what? No wonder he lived in the woods. Now that I think about it, I want to hug him really tight and never let go. Ever.
Poppy, I want your take on this. How did you feel when that scene ended, when Malin told Garrett, don't second guess this, but it's a good thing that your father is the one taking the fall? When you heard that, what was the first thing that came to your mind?
Well, it confirmed a lot of stuff. I mean, it certainly 100% confirmed as to why she killed him in the pilot episode. It confirms sort of his secret conversation with his father in the pilot episode. It just confirmed a lot of stuff that I think we suspected throughout these episodes. For me, though, I didn't see it the way that Jess was seeing it, in that she sees it as a confirmation that Madeline is a ringleader or something like that. For me, it confirms the fact that he is keeping this secret, this deep family secret that obviously Madeline is in on and that she knows about, but he's keeping the secret to protect his family and maybe to protect a particular person in the family, which we'll discuss that when we discuss the who we think the person is involved in all of this, because I feel like it confirms my suspicion as to who it is. But it certainly adds to the theory that, at least in my opinion, that he's keeping this secret because he's keeping it to protect someone in the family. Because if he says the truth, then all the cards fall down in their house of cards and house of lies.
True. Moving on further into the episode, we kind of see Brady puts on a timer on himself, and we kind of just see him speeding through and literally just going through parts of the city, and finally gets to his in-laws, and he notices on the timer it's roughly around 40 seconds. You see a cop pull up behind him, and it's Detective Cutter, and she says, "What on earth are you doing going 80 miles an hour to get to your in-laws?" He basically explains that there's something off about the case itself, that he felt that the time, because the information that he got from Tessa was that her father, before a while back, in order to surprise her, came home at around 5 in the morning. So they are notified that the time of an end of the breaking of one of the victims was around 3:45, 3:46, if I'm not mistaken, in the morning. So he wanted to know more or less if the time made sense going to and from the place so that way he can get back. So Detective Cutter tells him, if you're going to go ahead and do this, I'm going to go ahead and just be with you. So their main focus for them is to go ahead and find out if they can more or less prove if the time matches or if it makes sense. And then moving on a little bit further, we see Allison and her husband are kind of having, repercussions of the information that they found out. How her husband has already lost more than 5 clients within the week, and he explains, how are we going to handle this, financially, for our family, for our kids. And Allison says, I'm thinking of dropping out of the race. And he says, it's not just about you, it's about, our family and stuff. And then for some reason it kind of goes off to Allison kind of getting defensive and saying, you said that we agreed that we can sleep with whoever we want. And he kind of gets upset and says, well, you're not supposed to tell them, or tell you that I love you. And she starts to realize, that Naomi had told her that, but she never knew. And he explains, well, she had texted it to you and I deleted the text. Poppy, that exchange to me felt a little awkward, a little weird, but overall, how did you take this scene? Like, how did you react to the bickering that Allison had with her husband? Do you feel like it's really showcasing different sides of Allison, or do you feel like that the husband was kind of in the wrong? How did you take this scene?
If they got into the relationship, into the marriage as an open marriage, they both of them had to have expected like something like this to have happened, because sure, like an open marriage kind of makes sense if both of them are on the same page. If they're not on the same page, it's gonna go to shambles. I mean, he went into it with the idea that there were not going to be any feelings involved, it would just be sex, and this, that, or the other. And obviously, at least for Allison, with Naomi, it's developed into something where there are feelings. And so he's feeling threatened, and that's why he had that conversation with Naomi in the previous episode. And now, he basically is giving her an ultimatum. And I get where he's coming from, because he feels like, this is something threatening to his marriage, and she doesn't feel that way, at least, it seems, because she doesn't feel like she's developing feelings for Naomi. But obviously, once he said, that Naomi had texted her, I love you, something in her clicked, and maybe she was starting to realize that she got a little bit deeper in this extramarital affair than she intended to.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I felt like it's something in her just clicked, essentially. Finding out that was what was text to her, and I felt like she was more like, how come, I never noticed it, or she may have been, thinking that it was just, just a thing, like something on the side to have.
Yeah, and she also, much like her mother, she likes to be in control of things. So I think she probably felt like she was in control of the situation. That, okay, this is just sex, a little bit of intimacy, getting our rocks off and all that kind of stuff. And she didn't really realize that, by having all these deep and meaningful conversations with Naomi about life and about the campaign and about her dreams and aspirations, that this is turning into something that's more than sex. It's like intimacy. It's sharing stuff with another person that's not your partner. And, for some people, sex is just sex, but once you break the intimacy bond, once you start getting emotionally intimate with someone else, that's where the heartbreak and the heartache comes.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I can't feel sorry for the husband at all, actually, because that's like being like, okay, let's exclusively eat chocolate for the next 2 months. That's all we're going to do. And then being mad when you gain weight because all you ate was chocolate and you lived a mostly sedentary lifestyle. Like, if you're open to an open marriage, you either have to be like some sort of like have some sort of ability to compartmentalize, and make sure that it's just sex. Because eventually, I think that you will end up catching feelings for someone else, whether, it starts off as kind of maybe bitching a little bit about your significant other or just sharing details about your day or whatever. So I'm not really sympathetic towards either of them, because when you declare that it's open season and your marriage is an open one or your relationship is an open one, I mean, it comes with risks. Yeah, you'll get a lot of rewards, but you'll also get a lot of risk. And there's not really a way to separate yourself from that, like that I can see. So I'm not particularly, sympathetic towards either of them. I wasn't even mad that he went through her texts.
Well, damn. Jess does not believe in open marriages unless it's with ex-boy banders.
You know what? We can all be not married. That would be a good idea.
Speaking of ideas, we see Cam going to find Christina because earlier in the episode, Garrett had asked Cam for a favor. So Cam confronts her, and you could see she's defensive, and she says, are you gonna stalk me? She's already in. You could already see she's already in a bad mood herself.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's done with them. D-U-N, done.
She's done, even though she didn't even apologize for stabbing Garrett in a way. I'm just saying, I'm kind of already annoyed with her as a character already, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And Cam says, just to give him a chance. He wants to explain. He wants to talk to you, and she says, that he's insane, you're insane, your entire family's insane, and she says, well, it must be in your blood, like, excuse my language, but like a total bitch. Ooh. And she walks off and she just leaves. So personally, if I had to give my thoughts about it, I guess I can understand where she's coming from, but she really doesn't have this sense of tact. She really came off as just a obnoxious bitch. She didn't even apologize for stabbing someone, nearly killing somebody out of her own fear. And yes, during the time, she was under the impression, but again, she could have at least apologized, knowing full well that she was given the information of who, at this particular moment, who the killer is. So I was kind of annoyed at her for that, but it's whatever. But we kind of see the struggle that Cam has, to make this happen. We kind of see him like, I guess, whatever. But we also see that in Tessa, where she picks up the remains of the hot air balloon thing, jewelry, however you want to call it, off of the ground, and she's about to dump it into the trash can, and she kind of just freezes, and she's looking at it, and she's contemplating. She gets sad and upset, and she starts to slowly break down. It starts to build up inside her, and she starts to be overwhelmed with sadness and confusion and everything, and you could see her shaking a little bit actually in the scene, and she decides to get her phone, and she starts to go ahead and try to call, and set up an appointment. and you kind of see that she's definitely feeling the repercussions of the information that she was given. And you see what's interesting about this, or these collective scenes, before it gets into something a little bit more juicier, I guess. You see each of the siblings are finally seeing the repercussions of everything that they found out. And it moves forward to Allison in her office with Naomi and another individual, talking about, the chances of her still winning, and it looks, really, really grim. I mean, it looks, it looks bad. That apparently bestiality, according to them, is not as bad as having a serial killer as your father. So I thought that was funny. I really, really thought that was hilarious. And Allison makes the statement to Naomi that I'm gonna go ahead and drop out. Now, Poppy, if you were Allison, would you have immediately said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and drop out? Would you have been like that? Would you have dropped out of the campaign?
I would have. Yeah, I think I would have, just because, I mean, public perception is very strong when it comes to elections and who people are going to vote for. And with that sort of like bombshell that dropped about her family, I could see why the public would not want to vote for her. I mean, it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? This is a serial killer that had terrorized the community for 3+ years, and it had never been discovered who the serial killer was. And then all of a sudden, bam! It happens to be her father, and she's running for mayor. So I get why if I was in her position, I would have dropped out. Seeing the focus groups, and the focus groups basically saying, you could have done this, that, or the other, and we would vote for these people that have done these horrible things, but we won't vote for you because your father's a serial killer.
Because your father's a serial killer. Yeah, I thought that was a bit of a blow, like a really low blow, like, oh, well, your father's a serial killer, so definitely you can't run for office. So she really did, she really did show that this really does affect her, that all this hard work, and she's really contemplating of giving up, and and it's hard, and you could see that it's hard for her because just like her mother, but maybe not to the extremes of what her mother portrays. She definitely likes to have things in control and in her perspective, where she's aware of everything that's going on. And if we were to continue on with losing control, we see that Cam is with Sophie, and they're shooting up, and Tessa is visiting Cam with their son Jack, who, by the way, is still creepy as all hell in this episode, mind you. And Tessa sees that he's shooting up, and she says, you are going to rehab. You could tell she's fed up. She's had it, and she's done with it. And just, I guess you could say, just like a typical sibling thing, where you see your brother or your sister, or somebody that you care about, doing this, and you're definitely say, you know what, I'm done. Literally, like, you're going to rehab. This is no questions asked. And it moves. The scene then moves on to them at the rehab center, and Cam and Sophie are arguing about Jack is gonna stay with Tessa, in a better environment, and Sophie says, well, I'm his mother, I should have a say in this. And Tessa then says, not unless I call CPS. She threw out the CPS card at them, and you can see Sophie just looks at her like, bitch, like the little side head turn, like Stewie makes from Family Guy. Literally, that was her face. She literally just, you bitch, like, how dare you.
I wanted to punch it really bad.
Who, punch her?
I wanted to punch Sophie in the face really bad.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree how I thought it was irresponsible. I think completely stupid for her to believe that, well, because of the fact that she is his mother, that she should have some sort of say, even though she needs to clean up and she needs to get her crap together. No, I definitely agree with you.
I think that's
there.
one of her hallmarks. Like, it shows that she really is a terribly selfish, self-involved character. Because if you are a mother, you're going to put your child and what they need first. This wasn't about Jack. This was about her.
Right.
And I wanted to punch her in the face. Just, like, really hard in the face.
And I wanted to punch her in the face.
Yeah. In the face.
Me too.
Really hard, though.
Me
Or, like,
too.
kick her somewhere.
Right, exactly.
Just
So
violence all around. Jack is getting to me, guys.
Speaking of which, if we were to move on a little bit further, we get into the scene where Detective Brady and Detective Cutter go to the house of one of the victims, and they wanted to recreate the scenario of getting from point A to point B and seeing how fast and see if the time is relevant to the Silver Bells killer being able to get back. See if Mitch is really definitely able to complete this task. And seems kind of like crazy, but it definitely shows that Brady has some doubts behind it being Mitch, or it being it definitely only being one person, that he really wants to show, like, he really wants to, make it up to Tessa that, maybe it's not her father, maybe it was a mistake, maybe it's somebody else. You can't really, blame him. And if we were to go ahead and talk about those little relationships, we see Tessa and Garrett talking about the situation that Garrett put them in. How he didn't explain to them about their father, and you, again, kind of like what you pointed out, Jess, that you can see, Garrett really does feel bad for not telling Tessa about their father, and he's explaining, he thinks about everything that he missed and, all that stuff, and you could see that he really does want to have this strong bond that he has always had with Tessa. Do you guys feel like that their bond is so strong that it can definitely handle something, or do you feel like it's only gonna go further apart as Tessa becomes more, I guess, aware of everything that Garrett's doing? Poppy, how do you feel about their relationship, the sibling relationship that they have?
I feel like the siblings, for the most part, have a pretty strong relationship in general. If we're looking at all of the siblings, they seem to care about each other. I know in the beginning it didn't seem as much, in particular because of the Allison and sort of like Garrett feud that was going on, but I feel like all the siblings, especially after everything that they've been going through, that they sort of put their own like shit aside as far as like maybe dislike or disapproval of the other siblings, and they've bonded a bit more than they were at the beginning of the series. So I mean, there are elements of like Garrett like really being protective of Tessa, of Garrett being protective of Cam, Tessa being protective of Cam. So it's been nice to see the siblings bond, even though they've been going through some really tragic and what would be traumatic times.
Yeah, definitely. You can see that in an overall perspective, their bonds with each other, it's definitely strong, that they definitely do look out for one another, even though they do disagree with some of the things that each of them do or what they believe in or anything like that. But you can definitely see that they do have some sort of strong connection with each other, and then you can definitely see it more prevalent in Garrett and Tessa. And speaking of relationship, we see that Naomi confronts Allison about their little intimate relationship that they have, and Naomi kind of explains to Allison that that Tom confronted her about it, and she explains that that Tom had said that I was more of just like a little spice for you, but I feel like it's something much more than that, and that you feel the same way too. And she kind of gives her this little, I guess in a way, an ultimatum in some sense, because she says that eventually you're gonna have to choose, and she walks off. So I thought that scene was a little interesting, and you definitely see Allison's face where, crap, I thought I had everything under control, kind of like Matt, and she's like, I'm losing control of, the marriage, this relationship. So you could see that it definitely is affecting her, that she's not having a say in it as much as she would like. That it's starting to become very limited to how important her choices are starting to be now. And we see now, after Allison was given that little ultimatum, if we were to move on just a little bit further, Allison apparently invited over the press to the house, and you see Madeline drive up, and everyone's trying to talk to her, and her response, she just lifts up the key and starts the alarm. She's literally just had it with everything, with everyone and everything. And she asks, why is the press here? And Tom, and she confronts Tom, and Tom says, well, Allison invited them over. So this exchange too, I think, was really important in the episode, because we see Madeline and Allison are, discussing, what's gonna happen, Allison deciding to drop out of the race, and Madeline tells her, you're giving people exactly what they want, that they're stripping away the Hawthorne name, and you're just letting them crumble and shit all over it. You're literally allowing them to do that. And Allison explains that it would be really, really difficult to bounce back after this revelation that everybody has. And this moment I thought was so interesting, because I really thought, it was going to be like an intimate type moment. And we see, Madeline, holding Allison's shoulder, and for like a few seconds you're thinking, okay, maybe she's going to, tell her something, and no, bam, she slaps her.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh damn. She literally slapped her. And I'm thinking, excuse me, what in the world? And you could see Madeline is furious, and she tells you, you have an obstacle, and you can either choose to go around it or go over it, but you will not let it stop you. And she explains that you yourself have everything that I wanted. I thought these lines were really interesting about Madeline's character. And she says, you have everything because of me. That my decisions and everything that I did, my sacrifices, it led up to you having this moment. And then she cradles her cheek as if to say, oh, I'm sorry that I slapped you. And she says, and Madeline says, do not mess this up for either of us. Right there really does showcase that Madeline is a manipulative bitch. Holy crap. She only cares about her decisions, that she only cares about herself and what she can get, that really, no matter what her children feel or what they believe in, that really doesn't matter. That the ends definitely justify the means for her in those regards. Jess, how did you feel about that exchange? What were your thoughts? That Madeline slapping the shit out of Allison.
Okay, well, first of all, I wasn't watching the screen when she slapped her. I was looking at my dog because he was being cute. And so I heard the noise, and I thought she spat on her. So I had to rewind and like double check and just make sure. I was like, did she just? Ew. But then she slapped her. She didn't spit on her. I was like, that's still terrible.
That makes
Like,
it better?
well, at least she doesn't have someone's spit moistening her cheek,
I guess.
Delicious.
right?
And nutritious.
And probably salty with all of Madeline's bitterness.
Oh
But
my.
anyway,
Oh my.
I just, you know what? Madeline, we know what sort of background she comes from. We know that her entire life has basically been about clawing her way up from the pits of hell in which she was raised with her alcoholic hustler of a mother, right? We know that she pretty much, it was do or die for her. Like, she made sure that she got out, she got to a more prominent standing, and she could live a comfortable life, and her children could live a comfortable life. And so, as a result of that, I think like, parts of her, I think, are shut off. Where it wouldn't occur to a lot of people, I would say, that, didn't have to grow up in her circumstances, where it wouldn't occur to them to, like, slap their kids and tell them, like, no, you're fucking finishing this race, like, get your shit together. I don't think failure is an option for her, because I think she sees her children as an extension of herself, and so failure is not an option, because I think for her, she's like, look at what I had to do for you to make sure that you had this kind of life, these kinds of memories, that kind of childhood. Look at what I did. I'm a fucking saint and you're all fucking stupid. Just do what I tell you to do, please. Just do it. I feel like parts of her are shut off, basically, because she had to be that way in order to survive. And I don't necessarily blame her for that, but I wouldn't want her as a mother-in-law. And to be honest with you, if I was Allison, I would just be like, all right, but bye. And I would take off, take my husband, take my kids, move out to some random foreign-ass country, change my name, and just completely cut off contact with the rest of the Hawthorns forever and ever.
Wow.
Because her mom has, like, some really big, completely steel lady balls, and they're just, I'm scared of her. And I think that she is definitely capable of doing something horribly evil to end up where she needs to be. Because, Mike, like you said, the ends justify the means for Madeline. I don't think she cares about who she's hurting in the process as long as she gets what she wants, because I think in her eyes, she's still that jaded little girl that had to grow up, where she grew up with the mom that she grew up with. That chip on her shoulder hasn't gone away.
True. Yeah.
Jess, I think your lady balls are gorgeous.
Thank you! Grew myself.
Oh my god. Poppy, is there anything you want to add to it?
No, I think she said a mouthful. But bumped.
Oh my god.
Oh god, we're gonna get complaints, aren't we?
I don't enjoy Jess doing all these things.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time.
Oh
Take her
lord.
off here. I'm sorry.
Breaking news, Jess has been on-air personality. Jess has been removed from this program.
Now what am I gonna do with my nights?
Right, but speaking of being not removed, Allison decides to go through with it and tells the press, you know what, I am going to run for it, because she explains that the sins of our fathers should not dictate the actions towards their sons and their daughters. That whatever action or anything that the parent does should not reflect on the child. And she definitely makes a point that...
I agree.
And I completely agree with her that whatever decision...
Doesn't mean she's gonna win.
Right, it doesn't
But
mean
I
she's gonna
agree with
win,
her.
But I agree, yeah, exactly. I agree with her that, the decisions that were made, that her father and her mother, or whatever, made, that it shouldn't define who she is as an individual. That her Her father is a killer, which she had mentioned, but I am not. And she claims that, because of that, I'm, worked very hard for this, and I'm going to continue the race, and I'm going to see it through. So she decides to go through with exactly what her mother tells her, and the mother, looks at her from the side and is pleased. And she's like, yes, you followed through with it. Dear Lord. And moving on a little bit further, we see Christina comes back, and she decides to visit Garrett. But you could tell right off the bat, she kind of doesn't want to be there. She just wants to know, what is it that you want to tell me? And, she didn't even say sorry, first off. She, again, excuse my language, but this bitch didn't even apologize for stabbing him, almost killing him. But she asked, what is that you want to tell me? And he's saying, well, I want to say I'm sorry. And then she, interjects and says, that's not an apology. And I'm thinking to myself, you dumb bitch, like, let him apologize first off. Like, holy crap. Like, you stabbed him. You at least owe him, a chance to explain and to say sorry and to do all this. But, I'm being a little biased against her. But, again, I think she's a total bitch. But that's just me. But the scene basically just goes on, and he's trying to explain that, I wanted to know how you were doing. And he explains how he found her, and he wanted to know if she ended up okay. And it leads off to Christina saying, I trusted you, in this, is there anything else you want to tell me? And, he says, no, there isn't anything. And she kind of looks away, and she says, she makes a comment saying, you're good. And she says, but your pulse increases right before you're about to lie. And you notice that she's grabbing onto his arm or whatever to feel a pulse or to check to see if his pulse raises. And the screen kind of zooms in on him, and he's like, crap, like I can't get out of this. And she says, last chance, to tell me the truth. And she says, talk to me. And he stays quiet, and he just can't. And she decides to walk off. Poppy, I'm going to go to you for this one. Do you think Christina was in the right to do that? Do you feel like when she was asking for information, or she was asking for reasons as to Garrett's appearance, do you feel like she acted correctly? Do you feel like that was appropriate for her in that circumstance? Or do you feel like, no, it really wasn't, she could have handled it a different way? Or how did you feel about the exchange that they had?
Well, for her as a character that had been lied to, and, she had discovered all this stuff about what he was trying to do, or at least she put two and two together, I completely get why she did it. I don't feel like she was feeling his pulse, because I feel like he grabbed onto her. What she was doing is she was looking at the monitor, because the beeping, the beep, 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 like, as he was lying, the beeps would increase. At least that's what I noticed. I
didn't notice that, because I noticed that her arm was on his arm.
Okay, well, I don't know if maybe it's a combination of both things. That maybe it could be her touching him, and also the beeps of the monitor, because he ends up like tossing the monitor over afterwards, because I feel like that's what she also used to discover that he was lying, and that would have only worked.
He hit that only because that was like the closest thing to him, and something that was fragile and can fall off. I felt like if he were to punch over the IV that was connected to him, I thought that would have been worse.
Well, that too. Well, I mean, it could have been that as well, but I think it's interesting though that she's a nurse, that they made the character a nurse, because she would have noticed that kind of stuff. Right. Which I thought that was genius of the writers. Now, as far as her, like, I completely understand why she's mistrusting of him, and why she was monitoring him, basically, so that she could realize if he was being truthful with her, or if he was still hiding something. And obviously he's hiding something, because he had that weird, shady conversation with his mother. So I felt bad for him because you could really tell that he was digging her, and he finally felt, after all these years in the wilderness, that he found someone that he could connect with. But I mean, really, dude, she stabbed you, and you were kind of stalking her, and I mean, it just doesn't make sense why they would be together, especially with the past that he wasn't involved in that connects them. So it was doomed from out the gate, and auf Wiedersehen, Christina, hasta luego.
Ay. Jess, what about you? How did you take this scene?
I understand, both of them. I think for Christina, I do think her as a character, we have been presented with the fact that she lost her dad, and she's kind of been obsessed with, vengeance, getting revenge on this killer, and she thought Garrett was it. And even though it's not, it's pretty much been confirmed by the press that Mitch was SBK, so for her, I think maybe, I don't know, it was terrible that she stabbed him. Don't go around stabbing people, but also his dad killed her dad. So it was probably well, an eye for an eye, a generation too late. You know what I mean? Not that it's a right thing to do, but I can just see that kind of being her frame of mind based on what we've been given. And I have to agree with Poppy. This relationship is more doomed than Romeo and Juliet. Garrett,
and that's saying something.
You've spent 14 years in the wilderness. He's fucking acting like she's his fucking soulmate or something. No, dude, you stalked her. You cut yourself to purposely land in her clinic. You brought her out to the woods, and then you got fucking stabbed. What part of this screams future wife to you?
Maybe the sex was good.
That when she looks at him, she's not hearing wedding bells. I'm pretty sure that when she looks at him, she's hearing the satisfying slam of a jail cell.
Oh my.
And she's not planning on making any conjugal visits.
Well, orange is the new black.
Oh my god.
I don't see, I feel bad for him because he clearly is, more invested in her than she is in him. However, I do think that she's aware that he's lying. She's aware that there's more to the story. And, for her, it's more personal than it would be for, a regular Joe off the street, because her father was directly involved in these killings, and therefore, so was she. She lost somebody. So for her, she's kind of asking him and probing for more because she knows there's more to the story, and that's all that she has left. All she has left is that story, basically. And then she can finally, get closure and move on with her dad's death and properly deal with it, maybe, in her mind. That's what I'm thinking. I don't think that she's looking at Garrett as, something could happen between us. But you know what? It's TV land, so who knows? Maybe in the season finale, she'll be like, "Hey, Garrett, I love you." I hope not. God.
And that was the perfect imitation.
It was
Really?
fantastic.
I wasn't trying, but
Now, this scene definitely really just made it awkward for Jack, his character. So, I'm do something a little bit different. So, I'm going to have Poppy, I'm going to have you explain this fabulous scene with Jack. And then we're going to go and get Jess's response for this one, because I know she loves Jack.
fuck you.
She does. Okay, well, there needs to be the setup. So, Tessa, because of everything that she saw with her brother, and she was like, "You need to go to rehab," she was taking care of Jack that afternoon. And so she took him to the hospital, but she had to go to their appointment, so she left him with
Garrett.
And after Garrett gave him sort of like a stuffed animal where if you press the paw you can record a message, and he was like strangling it with cords, Garrett was like, okay, we're gonna get this fascination out of your system, because Jack was like, oh, I've been to the hospital twice this week and I haven't even seen a dead body. And so they took him, they sort of snuck into the morgue. They opened the door, they were watching an autopsy, and the doctor, or the ME, was basically like, and these are the signs that this person died from drowning. This is how the brain looks. And you can see Jack's face is all excited. So later on in the day, around the time of the press conference, while his uncle is banging one of the reporters in is that the same storage closet where they were banging in the pilot? I think so.
Yep, I think it was the same one.
That's like the right place to have sex, apparently, in the house. While that's going on, Jack is with the twins, and they're like, oh, let's play. I want to play with the teddy bear. Where'd you get the teddy bear? And he's like, Uncle Garrett gave it to me. And so he's like, if you want to play with it, you're going to have to get it. And so the pool is covered with like a blue tarp. And he throws the bear into the middle of the pool. But it lands on the tarp. And obviously because it's a teddy bear, it's light. The tarp isn't going to sink in. And so one of the twins jumps in. Well, first, he goes, see, the teddy bear is there, so you can just walk over and get it. And so one of the twins decides to do just that, except she falls into the pool, and I don't know if she doesn't know how to swim, but she starts freaking out. She's like screaming and everything, and the other one starts screaming, and Jack is there smiling, and then everybody being, Tessa and Allison and her husband start running out. They obviously pull the girl out. They're like, what happened? What's going on? Everything's okay. And they're like, we're leaving. And then Tessa grabs, well, at least in my mind, I don't know if she really grabbed him, but she grabs Jack, she shakes him, and she's like, what is wrong with you? And so, do you want me to wrap up? Because it's like a little scene after that.
Yeah.
Basically, she goes to Cam, because Cam now is in rehab, and Tessa has custody of Jack. And Sophie was all pissy about it, but Tessa was like, I'm gonna call CPS, so shut your ass. She goes to she goes to Cam and says that Jack needs to go to the school in Maine. It's for kids with disorders. And so maybe that's where Jack will be going. But now I'm kind of curious, because I know you set this up to basically ask Jess about this. Jess, what did you think of Jack?
Oh my God, Tessa, call CPS. He hurt those kids. He's gonna get bigger. He's gonna hurt you. You either need to get him
technically he didn't do anything to the kids,
or you need to get him killed right away. Either one, okay? Because he's not gonna grow out of his psychopathy. He's just like a weird psycho. He's not even a child. He is the spawn of Satan. And holy crap! Kudos to that actor. He's amazing. It must be draining, unless he digs it. But whatever, that kid is nowhere near me, so it's not my problem. But holy shit, how come they didn't call CPS? He tried to drown some children. How come literally...
Well, technically he didn't push the child in. The child did it voluntarily, so he did it the smart way. Although it doesn't make him less psychopathic.
Which is, again, he's a psychopath. He is a budding psychopath. I think those traits are set, and I think that the time for denial is long past. Get that child far away from those admittedly dim-bulbed twins, because he's gonna end up killing one of them. And I like that...
Well, they have another one.
They have another one, but what if he decides to kill them both for a magic set? Maybe he wants to make friendship bracelets with their skin, you don't know.
Yay.
And to give it to Phyllis.
Maybe. He can give her the dentures and the... No, okay. But, like, really, though, it just... it reminds me of this episode of Chicago Med. They had a little boy that was a psychopath, basically. Or no, a sociopath. And he kept hurting his little brother. And his parents knew that he was a danger, just like the Hawthorns realized that, you know, Jack is a danger and he's definitely not normal. And at the end, they basically chose to take both kids home and not get CPS involved, even though, you know, the final warning was basically if you don't do something, your older child is going to murder your younger one. And I definitely feel like that's the case with Jack. I feel like he needs to be institutionalized, not only for his own good, but for the sake of society, and particularly his cousins, who are, you know, around the same size or smaller than him, but definitely not as smart. Private school has not been a friend to those little girls. And they are just sitting ducks, waiting for Jack to come up with some sort of new experiment that he wants to test out on them. Because he either doesn't realize or doesn't care that he's drowning them. They're not going to come back. He doesn't care. He just wants to see their dead bodies. Like, he needs to be institutionalized for everyone's good. Every time this kid comes on the screen, I, like, clench up and, like, have to control my gag reflex. He is perfect birth control.
So you're saying he's like the literal embodiment of getting getting birth control.
He's basically a good reminder to pop the pill each and every day, because you don't want a little Jack on your
Each and every
hands.
day. Oh my God.
You don't want a little Jack on your hands, you will die. But I like,
No, Jess.
the parents, Allison and her handsome husband, were kind of just like, okay, you know what, I think we should go now. Tessa didn't really do anything besides grabbing him by the shoulders and being like, what is wrong with you? Like, is that it? That's all you're gonna do? I think you need to, like, finalize plans to get him somewhere and do it in the middle of the night. Like, don't
leave him on an island by himself.
do it in the middle of the night when he doesn't expect it, and he can be carted away, and he won't run away and turn into some sort of, like, creepy savage serial killer that lives in the woods.
Creepy savage.
He just, I know, everyone has a character that they would rather not see. Jack is mine.
I think a couple of viewers would probably agree with you. But speaking of not seeing somebody anymore, we see that Allison pulls Naomi inside, and Naomi says, you went up by a lot within just a small margin of 6 hours. And Allison explains to her that, I have a friend, a senator friend, that I put in a good word in for you, and you can go ahead and transfer there. And Naomi's completely, blindsided and oblivious as to, what are you talking about? And Allison's explaining, that way you can explore, better opportunities. And Allison explains that, I had to make a choice, and I'd rather, I'd rather be here with, and she goes on and explains that she'd rather be here with her family. And you can see Naomi's face that she's devastated, but you could tell that she she's not bawling, she's not crying or anything, and she just simply looks at her at a straight face and says, well, I'll go ahead and show you a copy of my resignation or whatever. And Allison says, you don't have to, don't worry about it. But if you look at, Naomi's face, she keeps a straight face. So to me, I feel like she's gonna do something. I don't know. I hope she does, because I actually kind of like Naomi. But I think
I like her too.
I like her. Yeah. So I'm wanting to see if she's gonna try to get back or say something or do something in order for her to stay here. But it's gonna be interesting. I feel like something's gonna go down. And speaking of something definitely going down, Garrett and Madeline have another exchange at the hospital, and Garrett says, I want to. I can't. And Garrett explains, I can't keep staring at people that I love and keep telling them a lie. I can't do it. And Madeline just looks at him with a straight face and says, yes, you can. Again, her controlling, manipulative side comes out, and Garrett reaches over and grabs her hand, and says, I'm gonna come clean. But then he starts making revelations as to, the truth trying to come out. And he asks, is that what happened to Dad? Because he wanted to tell the truth. Did you silence him? Did you kill him? And Madeline doesn't answer. She just wants to take her hand away. But Garrett
bum, bum, bum.
says, oh my God, like, are you serious? And Garrett essentially had asked, what would you do to me if I came out with the truth? And Madeline...
She'd kill your ass too.
Yeah, she probably would. And Madeline decides to tell him, do you think you're going to get the girl back? And she uses these different ploys to get into his head and explain to him that, no matter what you do, it's still going to be the end result. It just so happens that your decision for you to do that is just going to make everyone else's lives worse. And she explains to her that no matter what, you're not going to get the girl in the end. Like, what a little bitch. Really. But
it's true, though. I mean, if you think about it. I mean, she said it in a very cold, calculating way, because obviously she's trying to, figuratively, like, drive the knife in deeper.
Right, so that way he makes a decision to not, quote, come clean with everything that's happening and keep it a secret. And she just, she tells him, that she stabbed you, so what makes you think that you telling the truth is gonna actually change anything? What makes you think it's actually gonna make some sort of a difference? Because in the end, it's still gonna be the same. And she kind of just walks off, and Garrett is just, looking down and, can't fathom what to do. And then the scene then moves over to the final scene of the episode, and we see that Detective Brady and Detective Cutter are able to get a video feed from the gnome from across the street that was recording the night of the event. And Cutter says, well, don't be surprised if, what you find is just Mitch. So it
was the night before the murder. Because they had figured out, remember, that there was like a practice murder, or maybe not a practice, but they were going to do a murder, but the dog from this was the house across the street from the first murder house,
right?
The first victim, and the dog had interrupted it because like they were setting it up, and the SBK was setting it up. And it was stopped, and so the gnome had recorded the footage, but they had never looked at that footage because, it was just supposedly a burglary at the time. They didn't put two and two together.
Well, their time was cut short, essentially, from eyewitness reports, from the information that they got, because they put it together as more of like a pre-run. So
correct, and initially they thought it was just a burglary.
Right, initially they thought it was a burglary, but they noticed that a lot of the things were just changed or moved around or whatever. But
SBK had OCD.
Something like that on those regards, right? So then they decided to look at the footage, and they noticed that the passenger door opens up and closes, and then the car leaves. So then Brady puts two and two together and says, wait, the passenger door opens, and you could see that the lights or whatever, turn on when you open the car door, and he knows that now that because somebody had opened the passenger door and the car immediately leaves as soon as the door is closed, he comes to the conclusion that it was more than just one accomplice, that in reality it was two. That one person was driving and the other person was in the passenger side. Bum. Holy crap. And with that being said,
Well, two little plot points that were just missed. We found out Tessa is pregnant, and Allison told her husband that she chose her family.
well, not necessarily that she told him. She kind of just like alluded that that was the choice that she was going for. Not
Yeah.
plain out, but yeah, it was obviously, and she basically had stated it to him after the event of one of the twins drowning. But we're gonna go ahead and rate our episode. So I'll let Jess start off. If you had to rate the episode, what would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10 silver bells?
7 silver bells. It was pretty good.
Nice. Poppy, what would you give it if you had to rate the episode from 1 to 10 silver bells?
I'll give it 8.75 silver bells. I thought it was a really great episode. Lots of nice plot movement, some great moments with the characters, and I'm loving all the twists and turns that are falling upon us, and like all these revelations about SBK. So Brady and Cutter are doing a good job with the investigation. Oh, and I like Cutter now, for some reason.
Ugh. She's okay. I'll give you that. She's okay. I like her more than Christina for sure. But if I had to rate the episode, I probably would give it an 8. I think it was a solid episode. It really did move forward the overall plot, and I felt like it didn't bombard us with too many things happening. And I do like that they're now introducing a second option or a second killer or accomplice, however you want to put it. So I think that is cool. So it kind of gives a different twist or turn. So on that note, who do you guys think are the Silver Bells killers? Naming 2 people in y'all's prediction. Poppy, I'm going to start off with you. Who do you think are the 2 people that would be associated with the Silver Bells killers?
Okay, I think the Silver Bells killers are Mitch and Tessa. 100%. I feel like...
What?
Yes, I'm still sticking with Tessa, because
Okay.
I know that I've said Tessa basically since episode 2, but now that we have confirmation that that was Mitch's blood, so Mitch obviously was the one driving, and Tessa was in the passenger side. I feel like there's some sort of psychosis in the family that maybe there's one person in each generation. So it was Mitch, then Tessa, and now obviously Jack. And once again, I know I've said this before, but I feel like they're using Jack to show us that someone at that age can be a killer, or can turn into a killer with the right type of situation. And since Mitch was obsessed maybe with murder and whatnot, maybe that's what they bonded over. And because she was so young, maybe that's why she can't remember, or maybe they had her go through extensive therapy. I mean, they're rich. They can do that kind of stuff. And I feel like the night before they went on a balloon ride, that they were committing their first murder to celebrate her birthday. Why not?
Here's your reward.
The family that kills together bonds together.
Apparently so.
Or the family that bonds together kills together.
Jess, who do you think are the Silver Bells killers?
I was really, for some reason, like kind of side-eyeing Tessa a little bit, but her reaction at the end when she learns that she's pregnant, the look on her face just told me that all of a sudden she wasn't happy. And for me, it was because she was realizing, like, oh my god, there's murder in my DNA. How can I possibly be happy about, having a child that could potentially grow up as another Jack or another Mitch? You know what I mean? So if she was, I feel like she'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. I did these weird things too as a child. You know what I mean? And by weird, I mean murder. So I'm gonna go with Mitch and Madeline, because Madeline just, she's cold-blooded, and I think that between her and Mitch, from the little that we did see of Mitch, I think that Madeline is definitely the more dominant personality. So I feel like she was able to convince him to do all of these things as an outlet for whatever sort of emotion, inspired her to kill, whether it was frustration or blind rage or even like a need for arousal or something. Like, I'm gonna say Madeline. But at this point, to be fair, like, disclaimer, I'm probably totally wrong, because it feels kind of at this point like maybe Madeline would be too easy, but she definitely knows something.
Well, for me, obviously she knows everything, but like I kind of could buy your and Sam's theory that it's Madeline up until the point where she had that final conversation with Garrett, because it doesn't seem like Garrett is covering for her.
Yeah,
It seems like he's
true.
covering for someone in the family.
But then,
And so once they had that conversation, for me at least, it like completely removes Madeline from suspicion.
okay, because,
From her being the killer.
yeah,
But obviously she knows stuff because she knows stuff. I mean,
yeah.
she's the
But
matriarch of the
do
family.
you remember that episode where they sat on the stairs and Madeline was like, "I really want another little you," basically? When Tessa was talking about potentially getting pregnant and she said, "Oh, I want another you." Why
Yes.
would you want another mini serial killer? Like, that's not a good thing. You should all get hysterectomies or vasectomies for Cam and Garrett.
Well, maybe she might feel like since Jack has the gene that her offspring won't.
But why specifically did she say that to... I've never seen, Garrett or even Madeline be, I guess, tender is the word, with the other siblings, the way that they are with Tessa. Like, they're kind of playing with kid gloves, like, oh, she's so cute, she doesn't really know what's going on. She's kind of like...
Exactly,
a
that's what
puppy.
makes it suspicious to me.
I guess I could see it, but, like, are they afraid that she's gonna snap and, like, kill them all with a butcher knife in their sleep, or...
Well, it wouldn't be with a butcher knife, it would be with a belt.
Oh,
Maybe she'd just leave the bell next to them. Or, like, ring it annoyingly above their heads, and when they finally wake up with bleary eyes from sleep, she'd be like, "Guess who? It's me. You're dead."
I think if I had to, predict or guess who the Silverbell's killers are or were, however you want to use the tense. For now, I'm gonna stick with Mitch as one, only because they notified that his blood was on the belt. So right now, it's assumed that he is definitely one of the individuals that was a part of it. But I think if I had to choose a second person, damn, I don't want it to be Garrett, because I love Garrett. I think he's a great character. I'm hoping it's not him. I feel like it might be Cam. I don't know. I feel like for now I'm sticking with Mitch and Cam, only because I feel like if it was Tessa, I feel like that'd be kind of odd or weird. And I do understand that Jack is there to show us that whatever age you're at, or at a young age like that it can definitely still have some sort of influence to you. But the thing is, I don't see those tendencies that Tessa has. You would think that those really, I guess, psychotic tendencies that Jack portrays, or the way that he disassociates his emotional ties to certain events or things that happen, I don't see that from Tessa. I don't see her disconnecting herself or acting out those personality traits that you normally would see from an individual. But I feel like Madeline knows about it, and I think think she's aware of the stuff that's going on, but I feel like she's not technically a part of it. I don't think that she herself had anything. Not the fact that she didn't have anything to do with it, but I feel like she was aware of it, kind of like Garrett too. Like Garrett is aware, and I feel like he did. I feel like that part that he had mentioned about leaving, and that if he found out that if another killing took place, that he was going to come forth. But I think that part was true. But I do feel like that he did leave out the other individual out on purpose to protect that person. So I'm sticking with it until further notice. I'm going to stick with Mitch and Cam for now. But that pretty much wraps it up. Join us next time for a brand new installment of the Silver Bells Murders. Visit poppychuloradio.com/archives to download this episode and many more. Registered users will gain access to our archives of previously aired broadcasts. You can also download tonight's broadcast through iTunes. Just search for the Silver Bells Murders and subscribe. Please like Poppy Chulo Radio on Facebook by going to facebook.com/poppychuloradio. Please help support Poppy Chulo Radio financially by visiting gofundme.com/poppychuloradio. Email us via contact@poppychuloradio.com with any questions, suggestions, comments, or maybe even concerns. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chulo Radio team as an on-air personality or maybe even a blog contributor? Email talent@poppychuloradio.com. Co-hosts, wish the listeners a happy good night.
Squeeze me again and I'll strangle you.
Ew. Happy good night, listeners.
Good night, listeners. Silverbell's killers. We got you. Almost, maybe. Probably not.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for a brand new installment of the Silver Bells Murders. Good night, everyone.